So good day to everyone. We are the Group 8 and we're going to discuss about the period of the new society. But before we proceed to the focus of this report, which is the literary masterpieces, let's have first the introductory part of the report by giving the historical background of the new society. So, okay, number 1. Some changes in the life of the Filipino started under the new society. So the new society started on September 21, 1972 to 1980. So one of the big factors affect the change of lives in the new society is the declaration of martial law by the former President Ferdinand Marcos. So it also affects the themes of writings in this period. The themes of the writings was the development or progress of the country, green revolution, family planning, proper nutrition, environment, drug addiction, population try to stop pornography or those writing giving bad influence on the moral of the people. School, newspaper, and organization were temporarily stopped. Ministry of the Public Affairs of Office established by the government supervised the newspaper, book, and others publication. So number 2, former President Ferdinand Marcos called this period the New Republic of the Philippines, but his historian called the Third Republic. So with the declaration of the martial law, President Marcos popularized the new society, which he claimed was envisioned to carry out a meaningful social change in order to create a positive image in the public consciousness as well as in the local and foreign media that he was serious in effecting these changes. He initiated the following. So number 1, the dismissal from the office of civil servants who are found guilty of corruption and abuse of authority. Number 2, punishment of drug pusher. Number 3, setting curfew to solve worsening criminality rate. Number 4, popularization of isang bayan, isang diwa, philosophy to instill nationalism among Filipinos. And number 5, training of citizens to be disciplined and law-abiding. So number 3, because of the continued oppression and suppression, many people seated with rebellion and protest. So such was the situation of the Marcos era. What started a government elected to the better situation of the Filipino became an institution that ended up of heinous abuses. So the protector itself being the criminal, abusing and maltreating the people responsible for its creation in the first place. Its leader, a man put in a power to oversee welfare, and the people became a mad dictator concerned only with self-empowerment. The many injustices were perpetrated during the period of time called many citizens into action. These people worked to improve the relationship of the citizenry and the government through the pushing of reforms. However, the corruption of the institution was too great. Soon the valiant warrior of democracy were struck down. Their dreams for a better society cast down by the greed and avarice of single man. Sooner or later, as if the citizens were awakened to the abuses, the corruption that for so long it had been acting blind to. The spirit of justice had been awakened in the Filipino people once more. The people united in a common cause. Once again, the Filipino people united to overthrow the dictator. So number 4, Senator Benigno S. Aquino Jr., the idol of the Philippine masses, was brutally murdered on August 21, 1987. So the beginning of the end of the Marcos era occurred when his chief political rival, Liberal Party leader Benigno Ninoy Aquino, who had been jailed by Marcos for 8 years, was assassinated as he disembarked from the airplane at the Manila International Airport on August 21, 1983. Following medical treatment in the United States, Marcos' cronies were charged with this crime but were acquitted. Aquino, however, became a martyr, and his murder the focus of popular indignation against a corrupt regime. So number 5. people's voices could no longer be contained. Both the public and private sectors in the government were chanting, the shouting women, men, and the youth become bolder and rise in dissent. So, when the Marcos dominated, National Assembly proclaimed Marcos the winner. Cardinal Jaime Sin and key military leaders railed around the apparent majority vote winner, Aquino's widow, Corazon Cojuangco Aquino. The People Power movement, a popular uprising of priests, nuns, ordinary citizens, and children supported by defecting military units, ousted Marcos on the day of his inauguration on February 25, 1987, and brought Aquino to the power in an almost bloodless revolution. So now, let's proceed to the Palanca Awards. The Don Corazon Palanca Memorial Awards for Literature continued its recognition on the best in the literary fields. So, Carlos Palanca Memorial Award for Literature is the country's most prestigious and longest-running literary contest. It was to honor to the legacy of Don Carlos Palanca Sr. that the Carlos Palanca Memorial Awards for Literature was established in 1950 and the first award was given in 1951. Through this annual literary contest, the family and heirs of Carlos Palanca sought to keep his name alive, along with his legacy of discipline and perseverance, and to enrich the nation's cultural heritage. So this is the winner of the 1981 Palanca Awards. The first prize, Jesse B. Garcia in Hug Heaven. Second prize, Duning Bonifacio, Eras the Party. Third prize, Jesus Q. Cruz in the Hallowed Halls. In 1982 winners, first prize, Heart Islands by Jose Dalisay Jr. Second prize, Paz de Dux by Azucena Grago Uranza. Third prize, The Sky is Always Blue by Jo Marie A. Abueg. In the 1983 winners, the first prize, Old Timer by Jose Y. Dalisay Jr. Second prize, Games by Jesus O. Cruz. Third prize, Perfect Sunday by Jose Y. Ayala. And first prize in a Poetry Filipino, Jose F. Lacaba. First prize, English essay, Gregorio Brillantes. And second prize, English essay, Adrian Cristobal. So in the 1984 winners, first prize, The Reprieve by Juan S. Salazar. Second prize, The Tangerine Gumamela by Silvia Mendez Ventura. Third prize, Stranger in an Asian City by Gregorio Brillantes. And third prize co-winner, The Little Wars of Philemon Seyre by Lemuel Torrevillas. In the 1985 winners, first prize, The Hand of the Goa by Conrado de Quiros. The first prize, a Nobel Prize for George by Eli N. Boroso. Third prize, Mecca of the East by Charles Lowong. So now let's proceed to the poetry. So in the 1981 to 82 first prize, co-winners, Monologues of Otherwise, I and I'll by Pablo Liwanag, Outsider and One Other Forms by Cesar Felipe Bacani Jr. Second prize, co-winners, Masbate by Simeon Damdum Jr., Lightwear and Other Poems by Alfredo A. Yuson. Third prize, Pasanda and Other Poems, co-winners, Dolphins, Pinosaurs and Igis by Augusta de Aimeda. And the 1982 to 83 first prize, The Other Clearing by Dr. Hemino H. Abad, co-winners, Cirrus and Voyager by Rowena Torcebillas. Second prize, Teen Poems, Occasion by A Big and Small Events, and co-winners by Alfredo Navarro Salonga. Third prize, The Camerion by Cesar C. Hirco, co-winner, Ashoms by Simeon Damdum Jr., The Time Factor by Ofelia A. Lanta. So in 1984, first Configuring the Gods and Other Poems, co-winner, Voyage Poems. Second prize, Waiting for Lobregat, co-winners, Gossamer. Third prize, Port of Entry, co-writer, February 1899, Song of Three Continents. So So now let's proceed to the Filipino poetry, which will be reported by the next reporter.
The next one is Filipino poetry. Romantic and revolutionary poems were in the Third Republic. Romantic poems is a general or collective term to describe much of the art and literature produced during the late 18th and early 19th centuries. And one example of revolutionary poem during that time is the International. The writers wrote criticism or art of making a reasoned judgment against the government openly. Writers were more open during this time, especially about government issues. The supplications or asking humbly and submissively of the people were couched in fiery, colorful, violent, profane, and insulting language. Another example of Filipino poetry were Philosopher's Love Song by Tita Lacambra Ayala, The Tomato Game by NVM Gonzalez, and I Married a Newspaperman by Maria Luna Gonzalez. Next is Filipino songs. Themes are grief, poverty, aspirations for freedom, love of God, and love of country and of fellow men. One of these is O Ilaw, a popular example of the traditional Filipino love song genre kundiman. This song was made famous by Filipino singer and actor Ruben Tagalog, 1920 to 1983. The real title of the song is actually Aking Bituin, My Star. Its current title have been derived from its first two words, O Ilaw. The next one is Bayan Ko, written in 1929 by Filipino poet Jose Corazon de Jesus Huseng Batute, 1896 to 1932, and later set to music by Constancio de Guzman, 1903 to 1983. Bayan Ko, My Country, was meant as a patriotic song protesting the American occupation of the Philippines. Since then, it has practically been a second national anthem for freedom-loving Filipinos, a theme song for some of the most momentous events in Philippine history. Its most famous rendition is the one by Filipino folk singer Freddie Aguilar. Coritha and Eric composed a song titled Laban ng Bayan Ko, and Freddie Aguilar revived the song Bayan Ko, written by Jose Corazon de Jesus. As I mentioned a while ago, Bayan Ko was meant as a patriotic song protesting the American occupation of the Philippines. Philippine films. During the time, if you have Philippine songs, we also have Filipino films. The Festival of Filipino Films continued to be held during this period. The people's love for sex films was unabated, lessened, or declined. Many producers took advantage of this at the expense of public morality. One of the Philippine films were Dalagang Bukid by Jose Nepomuceno, first ever Filipino film, and also La Mariposa Negra, 1920, by Jose Nepomuceno, a drama film. Last is poetry in English during the Third Republic. During the wake of the tragic Benigno Aquino Jr.'s incident, Filipino reacted with shock and appalled by the suddenness and unexpectedness of events. By this, writers have no ideas for making poems or films that will catch the attention of the people. Alfredo Navarro Salonga, a consistent writer of Philippine Panorama magazine, wrote in his column, Post-Prandial Reflection. The poets and writers show their sympathy by putting pen and paper and speaking out as partisans in a human drama. They found themselves writing on a common subject. These were aptly called the protest poetry of the 80s. Protest poetry and songs have been written all throughout history and even in the present day. Even though there are many differences in the protest poetry, including theme, style, and language, they all seem to retain one feature. They all aim to get a message across and in doing so, engage their audience and inform them about a particular issue. And most themes of these times are courage, shock, and grief over the trickery or violation of faith inflicted upon Aquino. An example of this is Death Like Stone for Benigno S. Aquino Jr. from Philippine Panorama also.
Okay.
Now let's proceed to the Midra of 1983. So, Sheila S. Coronel started reporting when she was 14 years old in the year 1982 during the martial law. She was honored by the Panorama Staff Steward, a widely read magazine that time. She reported about the stand of the Midra during the reign of Marcos administration. During that time, Midra had been cracked down and had been closed. The government take over of newspaper, radio, and TV station, and the arrest of independent-minded journalists. So, number 2, the year became tremendous for the journalists as they imprisoned, tortured, and even killed if they published their work that is against the government. Journalists also use pen names for their work to name their work if it is a critic for the Marcos administration. Number 3, the Jaja or the Justice for Aquino, Justice for All, is called for a boycott of government. As they controlled the government and the people picked newspaper and newspaper office with confines to symbolize the death of the press freedom in the other campuses, and they burned the newspaper to symbolize the lack of free expression. Journalists who joined in the movement demanded to restore credibility and respectability of the newspaper and media. During the declaration of the martial law, the freedom of the press were denied because during that time, government controlled the media by limiting the ownership of newspaper and broadcasting station to his kin and cronies. Government take over the newspaper, radio, and TV station, and if that publication publish a work that's against the government, they held in detention or imprisoned, tortured, or even killed. Number 5, opposition tabloids were flourished, and they sold to the people who is starving for the truth. That happened to our country. Hence, smooth magazines like the Tiktik, Playboy, Scene, and Sakdal were also emerged. Radio Veritas led the reporting coverage of the demonstration of martial law. Number 7, Information Minister Gregorio Sindanya called the tabloid the Mosquito Press and their political pornography. Mosquito Press is a term in journalism coined during martial law. It was the term used for the publication during that time. Publications were linked to mosquito, which are small but have a stink bite. So now let's go to the children books. So Virgilio Almario, also known by his pen name Rio Alma, is a poet, literary historian, and critic who reviewed and reinvented traditional Filipino poetic form during 1970. He won the Palanca Award for Poetry for his Peregrinacion and Iba Pang Tula. Virgilio Almario is also involved with children's literature through the Aklat Adarna series that was published by his Children's Communication Center, where he directed. So, along with that, there are books that is published. So, in 1982, Place for Children by James B. Reuter, S.J. So, New Day Pub. 1983, Storytelling for Young Children. And also in 1983, Jose Encardo by Prigi Cor Manuel. 1983, Joaquines Curie meet Alamon Caco Hermanos. So 1983 also, Lahi, the five Filipino folk tales. So it was a 5 English book and 1 cassette tapes. So in 1984, Risalenia for Children, it was the illustration and folk tales by our own national hero, Dr. Jose Rizal. So it was introduced and annotated by Alfredo Navarro Salanga. 1984 also, Dagatan and Lawlaw, it was written by Jamie Alim Montero. So let's proceed to the next report.
B.
So let's proceed to the fables of this time. There were 4 fables famous in this time. They are The Crown of Jewels of His and Hers by Sylvia Mendez Ventura. The second one is The Emperor's New Underwear by Bernardo A. Macarai. The third one is The King's Cold by Babette Lolarga. And the fourth one is The Case of the Missing Charisma, Unfinished by Sylvia L. Mayaga. So in all the fables, the king, differently referred to as the Totus Marcus or the king or Haring Matinik, was meant to poke fun at the ruler at Malacanang. Similarly, Reina Macanta or the queen was a veiled thrust at his queen. They are both drunk with power and were punished in the end of their misdeeds. So the Totus Marcus or the king or the Haring Matinik was the character of the King's Cold and the Crown of Jewels of His and Birds. And the Reina Macanta or the Queen is in the characters of the Case of the Missing Charisma. So they are the fables which is similar to the government of that time. So they were both drunk with power and were punished in the end for their misdeeds. So the leaders of this time was compared to the characters of this story because the leaders of this time, like the Marcos administrations, were drunk with their power and they were abusive in their authority and their power in the government. So the next one is the state of the Philippine literature in English at this time. So Izanagi Cruz, writing about the Philippine literature in the age of Ninoy, makes the following observations. And he quote, "Philippine literature is definitely changing." And he summarizes this as follows. Number 1, change in direction of greater consciousness in content and form. So in change in direction, greater consciousness, the people of this time was aware of what happening in the government. So they were conscious of what's happening in their surroundings, or what the government does to them, or what happened to the most prominent people that time. So for them to express what they feel or what they want to tell, they use the content in form of what the Philippine literature in this time. So second one is change in the number of readers and the number of writers and the kind of class writers. So in this time, writers who joined the ranks came not only from the established or the professional groups, but from all ranks. And these ranks are clerks, secretaries, drivers, housewives, students, in short, the masses. So all ranks in the Philippines or in the country, they were the ones who were the readers, they are the writers, they come to express themselves or what they want to say or what they have, what they feel about the happenings in this time. So the third one is the resurgence of Balagtasismo and the continuation of the dominance of the Modernismo. So the Balagtasismo turned its back on the American challenge to Philippine literature its conservative and conventions. Then the Modernismo adopted Americanization for its own ends. So the fourth one is the birth of a new poetic movement, still dim in outline. So the new poetic movement here is discussed is the how the writers or the masses still not enough to gain the justice they want, because that time is Senator Benigno S. Aquino was murdered, and nothing until now, and no one is got in jail to get the freedom or the justice they want, because Senator Aquino was the one who just fight for them, to speak out for them. And the last one is the apparent merging of the erstwhile separate streams of oral and written literature. So the oral and written literature was apparent merging in this time, and that was the state of the Philippine literature in English at the period of Third Republic. So some writers during this period was in 1981. In year of 1981, Philippine folk literature by Damiana Eugenio, Adventures of Marian by Carissa Orosa Uy, and in year of 1982, Somewhere Between Smile and Your Frown and Other Forms by Mila R. Garcia. In year 1983, Pares Pares by Bienvenido M. Noriega Jr. and Agon Poems by Edgar B. Maranian. So in year of 1984, The Farmer by Alfredo Navarro Salonga. And the next one is the Road to Moab and Other Stories by Leoncio P. Derrida. So these are the writers during this period. They have the some contributions that help the Philippine literature at this time. So that was the report of Group 8 of period of Third Republic. So that's all.